So we will discuss about the soil profile. What's mean by this soil profile? So look at this diagram. So in this diagram, you can able to observe this is the diagram which gives the vertical section of a soil. You can see this is the top soil and this is the deep soil. So when you are going through a vertical section of a matured soil, and that will show the many layers. Carefully, if you observe, there are many layers you can see. With even you can identify by the different colors. So thereby, a vertical section of the matured soil will show the several layers. And each layer is having a distinct physical as well as the chemical properties. And these different layers, which are considered to be as a soil horizons. What actually the soil profile? Soil profile is the vertical cross section of layers of soil found in a given area. So why it is so? The soil varies from place to place with regard to the composition, its structure, or its physical and chemical properties. That's why the soil profile restricted to a particular place, particular area. And in that vertical section, we could able to observe these different layers. And these layers which are seen, they are called as a profiles. Sorry, they are called as a horizons. Uh, the horizons or the soil layers which is exhibited in the vertical section, then it is called as a soil profile. So now, what is soil horizon? You can see soil horizons are the layers in the soil profile, and which helps in classifying the soil types. Different types of soils we can classify just by looking at the different types of horizons present in that soil profile. And these soil horizons are based on the different color, texture, the roots, structure, rock fragments present in that, and that these all together makes a unique character of that particular profile. So basically, we can able to observe this soil profile can be distinguished into different horizons, or that is called as a soil layers. And what is that soil layers? They are broadly classified as O horizon, you can see that, B horizon, C horizon, and R horizon. So that is how the distinction we can able to observe as O horizon, the uppermost, followed by A horizon, B horizon, C horizon, and R horizon. So now coming to the first horizon, which is the topmost horizon, and it is considered to be as a surface layers of the soil. You can see that this is the diagram, and these surface layers of the soil, it is considered to be as a O horizon, or it is also called as a topsoil. It is also called as a topsoil, and this may extend up to a depth of about 2 meters. Sorry, 2 feet, about 2 feet, and this is having a dark colorization. And this O horizon is the more fertile soil because it is mixed with the organic materials. So what is that organic materials? That is organic materials means the litter which has been falling, the leaf fall, the twigs, or the dead plant bodies, the animal bodies, they have been deposited on the surface of the soil. And thereby, those leaf litters which are accumulated, they are decomposed. And thereby, this soil becomes more fertile and it is darker in color. And the soil is soft because of the mixture of this organic matter, the humus. And this O horizon is again for convenience is divided into different layers as O1 horizon, O2 horizon. And as I told you, it is about a 2 feet depth. And this topmost layer of this O horizon, or the uppermost surface layer of this O horizon, is considered as O1 horizon. It is rich in fleshly fallen leaves and also the twigs, and which are yet to decompose. And that is the topmost region where they are yet to decompose. That whatever the litter fallen, they have yet to decompose, and that is called as a O1 horizon. Then below that we can see the O2 horizon. This is just below this O1 horizon, where this upper portion of the O2 horizon contains partially decomposed organic matter. And you know that the partially decomposed organic matter is called as a detritus. It's called as a detritus. And sometimes this layer is also called as a duff layer. It's also called as a duff layer, DUFF, duff layer. But if you go further deep into this O2 horizon, in that case we can able to observe that organic matter, the detritus, which is a decomposed matter, is mixing with the soil, slightly mixing with the soil. And now that is called as a humus. Look at the term detritus and humus. Detritus is a decomposed matter, organic matter. And this decomposed organic matter, detritus, when mixes with the soil particles, then it is called as a humus. So that's why O horizon is composed of O1 and O2 horizons. Then A horizon. It is the top soil, we can say, because in the O horizon, the soil particles are a bit lesser. It is rich in organic matter. But A horizon is a mixture of both organic matter as well as the soil, and that is considered as a topsoil. And it can extend from 2 to 10 feet in depth. 2 to 10 feet in depth. And because of the mixture of the humus, this soil is dark colored. That is containing a decomposed organic matter which is called as humus and which is also mixed with minerals. When there is a decomposition of a detritus, those complex organic molecules are transformed into simpler inorganic substances by decomposition. That's why also there is a mixture of minerals, and where we can able to observe these layers are rich in bacteria and fungi, because this is considered as decomposers. Bacteria and fungi are considered as a decomposers. So thereby we can say there is a decomposition. But again, A horizon can be further divided into three layers: A1 horizon, A2 horizon, and A3 horizon. A1 layer is much more darker layer, which is very next to the O horizon. That's why maximum organic matter is mixed with soil here. And also this is the top layer of A horizon, called as the A1 layer, is rich in bacteria and fungi. Then below that A1 layer, we can see the A2 layer. It is comparatively light in color and containing the lesser amount of humus compared to the A1 layer, because there is a leaching, maximum leaching on this. That is, during the rain, the water percolates down into the soil, and during percolation, some of these humus will be leaching away, drained away, and that's why we can see the light color. Then A3 layer, it is a translational layer. Transitional layer means it is merging with the lower B horizon. So topmost horizon is the O, followed by A. A is divided into A1, A2, and A3. And A3 layer is a transition layer which merges with the B horizon at the lower end. And in some cases, this layer is unable to be recognized in some soils. Unable to recognize because it is a transition layer which is merged with the B horizon. Now coming to the third main horizon, that is a B horizon. This is the zone of alleviation, in which most of the materials leached out of the A horizon or gets precipitated. Okay, this is an alleviation layer because from the A horizon, whatever the materials are leached out, they are precipitating here in this B horizon. And organic compounds are converted into inorganic compounds in these layers also with some bacteria acting as a decomposers. And this B horizon is also further divided into B1, B2, and B3. It is also further divided into B1, B2, and B3. So in B1, B2, and B3, B1 is a translation layer once again. So you can see this is the O horizon followed by A horizon, and this is the B horizon. B horizon also will have recognized as three zones. It is not mentioned in the diagram. It can be subdivided into B1, B2, and B3. And B1 is again a translation layer merging with the B horizon and A3. A3, this top region of B. That's called the B1 layer. And B2, it is deep color layer. We can this zone we can say this is deep color layer where we can see the maximum receipt of transported colloids. Transported colloids. So that is where we can able to observe as the B2 layer. B3 layer is again transition zone with the C horizon. B3 layer is a transition zone with the C horizon. So what is the C horizon? C horizon, we can able to observe that as also called as regolith horizon. Its depth is up to 30 to 48 feet. And where we can able to observe it is made up of large rocks, partially broken bedrocks, partially broken bedrocks. That means you can see here in this diagram, this is the bedrock deep into the earth crust. And they have been broken down. And then we can able to observe this, particularly the sea horizons here. This is the sea horizons above the bedrock. So thereby we can see these are the sea horizons where we can able to observe these broken bedrocks that we can see there. That is considered to be as a sea horizon. And generally it is devoid of organic matter because simply it is broken bedrock and the organic matter is not reaching up to this level from the top A layers, and but it is having the minerals and which is under the process of weathering. Then the last one is the R horizon. R horizon. What is this R horizon? This is the zone of unweathered bedrock. Unweathered bedrock where the weathering is not seen. You can see the complete compact rock that we can see, from which the soil is going to be formed in future. And this is generally of a depth, an average depth of about 448 feet, and which is the deepest soil horizon. And here a mass of bedrock that we can see, and the color will vary. The color of this zone will vary because of the specific original rock color. So this is how we can able to observe these different horizons which are clearly distinguished and which is as a O horizon, A horizon, B horizon, C horizon, and a R horizon. And that R horizon is a parental rock. So this is all about the soil profile and the soil horizon. So here ends the discussion on the soil as an ecological factor. So now let's move on to the another ecological factor, that is as water. Okay, so now you can see the PowerPoint of the another topic on water. So water is also another ecological factor which is governing the growth of particular organism. We know the soil makes a habitat for all the living organisms. And apart from that, water is the another ecological factor, which is the most important ecological factor. And where we can able to observe this water is a natural resource and which is most important for the presence of a life. And that's why we know that the earth is the only planet where there is a living organism. Why not in the other planets? That indicates that water is one of the most essential for life to exist. In what way? We know that water is the important component of a protoplasm, and where you know that protoplasm is a living fluid. A cell is said to be in a living state when it contains, the protoplasm contains about 90% of water in it. Thereby, water is as essential and it is the place where all other metabolic activities are going on, because the cell will have different cell organelles, you know that, and each cell organelle is located in the protoplasm, means the living fluid, the protoplasm. And that watery media is the region where all other metabolic activities are occurring, because take up all these cell organelles, mitochondria, Golgi complex, endoplasmic reticulum, whatever, they have their own functions to play, they have their own metabolic activities to play, and all these are occurring in the medium of water. So without water we cannot consider as the cells are living, or the protoplasm is living, or the entire organism is living. So for the life of every organism, water is a must. Then the earth is having a sufficient amount of water. You know that. Where three-fourths of the earth's surface is covered with water. That's why earth is also called as a water planet. As I told you, no other planets are having a water. That's why earth is considered as a water planet. But even though three-fourths of the area of a earth covered by water, how much of water is readily available for use? Where we can able to observe most of the water, that is about 97.41%. You can see this. On an entire earth, we can able to observe the total water content is shown here. But this dark blue colored region which has been shown makes up about 97.41%. And that is the water present in the sea and oceans. And you know that this sea and ocean water is a salt water. And this water is too salty that it cannot be used for the drinking purpose or even for the irrigation purpose. So thereby we can expect only tiny fraction, a small fraction of water which is considered as a fresh water, which is actually makes about roughly 3%. If you consider this sea and ocean water as a 97%, we can say that fresh water is roughly about 3% only. And again, we can able to observe this, consider this about 3% or 2.59% of fresh water, which occurs in this form, where again about 2.997% is present in the form of a glaciers and is in a caps, ice caps, and where we can able to observe only about 0.592% is groundwater. So among this 2.59% of fresh water available on the earth, about 1.954% is present in the glaciers and ice caps, which is not available for the living organisms. The available water is in the form of a groundwater. It is about 0.9592% only, groundwater. And then we can able to observe among this water, again readily available water for the plants for absorption. What is that? Only 0.01%, 1.4%. It is readily available for the absorption. And this available water is present again distributed in the lakes, rivers, and also in the form of water vapors. So they are in the form of a groundwater, river, lake, stream, soil moisture, and as well as a water vapor. So thereby we can see the maximum amount of water present on the earth is in the seas and oceans, and which is unfit for drinking purpose. And most of the fresh water available is in the frozen form, in the form of a glaciers, and they are also in a polar region. Then we can able to observe only small fraction of the fresh water is readily available for us. But the water which is present on the earth, they are in three different forms, namely solid, liquid, and gaseous. And this water form, liquid form, exists in different forms due to climatic variations, climatic conditions. And water is important resource as it is used for drinking, cleaning, cooking, etc. by the human being. That's why it is to be preserved and carefully used. So we are not taking care of the water. So uncontrolled use and uncontrolled pollution of the water will be a greater threat for the future generation. Greater threat. And because as we have seen that water is essential for the survival of every life on this earth. Then now let us study what are the forms of water on the earth. And we know that water cycles, that is called as a hydrological cycle. And during this process of hydrological cycle or water cycle, water get transformed into three forms: solid, liquid, and gaseous forms. And water is being continuously used. And that's why water conservation is one of the major concern today. At present, you know that everywhere if you go through, either in TV or in newspapers, where there is a lot of awareness programs, trying to create the awareness among the people to conserve the water. And that's why we have to take care of the water not only for our sake but for the future generation. And this water cycles, hydrological cycle, which I told, is helping in maintaining the water on the surface of the earth. And this hydrological cycle is taking place from millions of years. It has to be continued. And if this water cycle continues, then only we can find the water on the surface of the earth, which is available for the living organism. The solid form of water, which is ice, as we have discussed, it is found in the polar regions of the earth, and also the snow covered on the tops of the mountains and the glaciers. The liquid form of water is present in rivers, lakes, seas, ocean. And the gaseous form of water is present in the form of a water vapor, which is present all around us, that is in the atmosphere, or also this water vapor present in the soil also. So now water which is present in the oceans and the seas evaporates because greater area of the earth is covered by sea and ocean. We have seen that. Okay, about 97% of the earth's surface is covered by sea and oceans. And from this surface, there is a continuous evaporation of water. But in ice caps and also from the snow at the mountain tops, directly water can evaporate. Thus, the atmosphere has a lower temperature in some parts of the world, that we know that. And that results in these water vapors to condense into tiny droplets. Okay, these water vapors are converted into tiny droplets. And these tiny droplets are heavier, is heavier than the air. And thereby they fall. And the huge concentration of these tiny droplets results in the formation of a cloud, the visible cloud that we can see. And these cloud particles will collide with the dust particles and results in the precipitation. The precipitation occurs in the form of a rain or snowfall, that you know that. And this mainly rainwater which falls onto the earth flows to the rivers and lakes and ultimately it joins with the ocean and sea. But some of this rainwater is absorbed by the earth's surface. And when it percolates down the earth's surface, they have been dragged by the gravitational force. And thereby it has been added onto the groundwater. And thus, again we can see this continuous cycling of water. That is, evaporation of water from the water bodies. Evaporation can also occur from earth surface. Transpiration can occur from plant surface. Thereby, water is converted into vapors. And in the atmosphere, they are again condensed. Water vapors are condensed into tiny droplets. It get transformed into raindrops and falls onto the earth's surface. So that is how the water cycle continues, we can say. Then we have to discuss, we have to mainly concentrate on the types of water which is present in the soil. Okay, that we have to concentrate. Though the soil particles appears to be closely packed, but they are not so closely packed as there is no space. There is a space, angular space, which is present always between the soil particles. In this diagram, you can see it is drawn as a soil particles. Okay, and there will be space in between these soil particles. Means the soil particles are not closely packed. There is a space, and all such spaces in the soil are collectively called as a pore space. Pore space. And this pore space comprises a constant volume in the soil, about 40 to 60%. You can imagine the pore space volume itself is 40 to 60% of the total soil volume, which generally remains filled with water and gases. Always filled with water and gases. But the proportions of the water and the gas filled in this pore space varies. And you know that soil can be considered as one as a dry type of soil and another is a wet type of soil, dry soil and wet soil. How do you recognize? Dry soil means it contains the lesser proportion of water. Wet soil means it is having a greater proportion of water. So thereby, the proportion between the water and the gas in the soil varies. Dry soil will have more water, more air, and lesser water content, and wet soil is having more water and lesser air. Then what is the different forms of water? As we know that the source of water for the soil is the rain, and during the rain water falls onto the surface and which is percolates down into the deep earth crust through these pore spaces, and excess water is runs along the slope, adds on to the streams, rivers, and ultimately the seas and oceans. But during this, some amount of water enters into the land, and in land or in soil they present in these forms. You can see there is a gravitational water, and already we have discussed in the earlier class what is that gravitational water. This is a form of water which reaches to the water table due to the gravitational force. When there is a rain, water percolates between the pore spaces, and while percolating they are attracted by the gravitational force and dragged deep into the earth crust and added onto the water table. And the water table is in a great depth in the soil, and this water is not readily available for the plants to absorb because roots cannot reach up to that greater depth. But nowadays we know that for the irrigation purpose, by mechanical methods, this water has been lifted by using the pumps, and it is made available for irrigation. Otherwise, gravitational water is not available. Then second is hygroscopic water. So where we can see, this is the diagram, gravitational water, they directly percolates deep into the soil and here it reaches to the water table. Then hygroscopic water. So what is this hygroscopic water? In this diagram you can see a thin film of water is tightly held by the soil particles. See, this is a soil particle, and the surface of the soil particles are able to hold this water in the form of a very thin film, but they are held hygroscopically by an adhesive nature. And the binding force of this soil particle and the water particle is such a great that plants cannot pull out that water. Or in other words, we can say the plants cannot absorb that water. Or this water is not available for the plants to absorb. Then next is chemically combined water. The amount of water present in chemical compounds. What is that chemical compounds which are present in the soil? So they are combined with this chemical substances present in the soil, and they are called as chemically combined water, and they are also not available for the plants. Then capillary water, rest with the capillary water. Water exists between the soil particles in a small capillary pores here in between the soil particles. This water, capillary pores, and that is called as capillary water. And this is the water which is available for the plants to absorb. Capillary water is available for plants to absorb. And apart from these four forms of water present in the soil, also we can see there is a atmospheric humidity. This is water present in the air, and also we can see there is a soil water that is in the form of a water vapors, and that is also present in the soil. So that is what we can expect, the different forms of water present in the soil. So this water is available for the plants. So this is what we have to discuss with the today class. That is, we have discussed about the futures of soil profile, and also soil horizons, and which is required for understanding the nature of the soil, the composition of the soil, the fertility of the soil, and how much amount of soil is present in that. That will be studied by that soil profile. And then we have discussed about the water as a natural source for the life, and how the water is available for the organisms on this earth, how much amount of water is available, and as the fresh water available for human consumption or the living life is in a very lesser proportion. That's why we have to manage that water carefully. And also we have discussed about the types of water present in the soil, that is as gravitational water, hygroscopic water, chemically combined water, and capillary water. So these are the things we have discussed so far. So let me